Neither of us knew what was waiting for us inside Max's candy bucket. We'd just brought it back home from trick-or-treating and unlocked the front door. The second I turned the knob, Max shot into the living room, holding his pumpkin-shaped candy bucket in both hands. He flipped it over, gave it a shake, and all his candy poured out onto the carpet. Then he tossed the bucket aside. "Mommy, Mommy," he screamed. "Can I eat my candy now?" I came in behind him, laughing, because only a 5-year-old could get that pumped about eating candy. "Thank you for asking. Go ahead." I sat beside him, crisscross applesauce, and watched. Max worked through the pile by opening a piece, tasting it, then either scrunching up his face or giggling in approval before moving on to the next. It was adorable. Seeing him like that made me smile, but as I kept watching, the moment began to sour. See, I was a single mother. We lived off my income alone. And because I was just a waitress in a small cafe, money was tight. There were some days when I could only afford to feed Max and not myself. Whenever he asked why I wasn't eating, I'd say I already ate at the restaurant, which was a lie, because even with my employee discount, those meals still cost money. My manager had even fired employees before for sneaking food without paying. I lied because I didn't want Max to worry. I think kids shouldn't have to worry about those kinds of things. They should be having fun, like Max was doing now. But while I watched him eat his candy, and I saw the happiness he got from what only strangers could give him, something twisted up inside me. I felt like a failure as a mother. Max noticed I wasn't eating any candy and piled several pieces in front of me. "No, honey," I said, putting them back on his pile. "These are all yours. Mommy doesn't want any." "Why not?" "Because I don't want to take any from you." Once I said that, a flicker of sadness moved in his eyes. He looked up at me almost like he was beginning to understand something about me, like he'd had a realization, wise beyond his years. It broke my heart. "Okay," I said. "Just one. You choose." Max smiled. He hovered his little fingers over the pile, carefully weighing his options, and stalled over a Reese's peanut butter cup. He squeezed down and lifted. Underneath, the corner of something jabbed out. It looked like a small stack of paper. It looked glossy, and even gleamed in the overhead light. Whatever it was, I could tell it wasn't candy. Did one of the neighbors put something in there by accident? I reached down and pulled at the corner, and out slid a stack of Polaroid pictures. There were 3 of them, stuck together with a rubber band. "What's this, Max?" Max didn't say anything. He watched curiously as I snapped off the rubber band and flipped the stack over. The first picture framed a residential home at night. An adult woman stood on the sidewalk with a hand on her hip, watching a much smaller person, most likely a child, approach the front door. The lighting was so dark I couldn't tell who they were, but in the child's hand I could see them gripping onto something, like a pail or a bucket. Right then, I got it. This was a parent watching her child go trick-or-treating. Yep, one of the neighbors must have put this in here by mistake. I wondered who it was. I flipped to the next picture. I actually recognized the subject in this one. It was my neighbor Terry, standing at his opened front door. Someone who was hidden just beneath the frame held up a bucket, and Terry, smiling warmly like always, dropped a few pieces of candy in. Something about that bucket caught my eye. I studied it, noticing its circular shape, and realized it was designed to look like a pumpkin. My eyes drifted over to Max's pumpkin-shaped bucket on the carpet. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't want to jump to any conclusions. I flipped to the final picture. It was a shot of an open window, taken from behind a bush. A few out-of-focus leaves dangled in the foreground. But in sharp focus, right in the center of the picture, was my son's smiling face. I was behind him, zipping up his costume, just before we went trick-or-treating. We were standing inside this very room. "Max," I said, keeping my voice as calm as possible, "which house gave you these?" Max scrunched up his forehead while he thought. He shrugged. Then he reached for another piece of candy. I blocked his hand. "Stop! Don't eat any more of that." I stood, glanced around. I was beginning to panic. How come? Because I said so. Don't ask questions right now. Max began to cry. I ran to the front door to check the lock. It was already set. Okay. I'd just taken my son trick-or-treating. Someone was following us. They took pictures of us and then dropped those pictures inside his bucket. We only went around our neighborhood, so it had to be one of our neighbors who did it. Was this someone's kind of sick joke, or was one of them really stalking us? What do I do? I looked past the living room, into the kitchen. My phone was on the island counter. I raced over to it and dialed 911. It rang twice. Then the operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, Max interrupted, tugging on my leg, crying for me to let him eat more candy. Honey, I will buy you more candy, but Mommy is on the phone, right? 911, the operator repeated. Please state your emergency. Yes, we need help. Please. I think someone is stalking me. The operator took down my name, address, and details about what happened. 10 minutes later, 2 officers were at my house. One shone a flashlight around my property, while the other one, a young, tall officer, came to the door. He introduced himself as Officer Dan and asked for the photos. I'm Jenny, and this is all of them, I said, handing them over. He took them with a gloved hand and scanned over the first one. While I waited, I felt Max stir behind me. He was hiding behind my legs, peeking up at the officer. Officer Dan flipped to the second one, looked at it, then cleared his throat. Who's the man here? That's my neighbor Terry, but it couldn't be him. He's a good man. I'm sure he is, he said. He flipped to the final picture. He studied it, and as he drank in the details, the faint lines around his eyes sharpened. He looked down at Max, then up to me. So what's going to happen now? I said. My voice sounded more desperate than I had intended. We're going to sweep the neighborhood. Even if we don't find anything, there'll be an officer nearby to patrol every hour. Also, we'll speak with Mr. Terry. Not because he's a suspect, but just in case he's seen any suspicious activity. Also, I see that he has a Ring camera. We'll check the footage on that as well. Now, ma'am. He took a glance behind me. Is it just you two in the house? Yes, I said. Just us. Is there somewhere else you can stay tonight? Maybe with friends or family? There wasn't. All my friends were my husband's. And once he left me, so did they. I started to answer, but was caught by surprise when tears welled in my eyes. Whether it was the stress of our situation or just me being scared, I didn't know. I blinked them away before they could fall and shook my head. No, it's just us. He nodded. Well, there's a DoubleTree down the road. Wouldn't be a bad idea for you guys to book a room tonight. Book a room? I don't even know how I'm going to feed Max tomorrow. Officer, that's not really an option for us. Officer Dan gave me this look then. Honestly, it wasn't so different from the one Max sometimes gave me. With Max, I always thought it was a normal sadness that kids feel when they don't get their way. But with the officer, there was something deeper. I think he actually felt sorry for me. And I never wanted that. I never wanted that from anybody. I felt embarrassed. Look, he said, pulling a pencil and notepad from his shirt pocket. This is my personal number. Doesn't matter what time. If you need anything at all, give me a call. I'll be close. Thank you, officer. Just Dan, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. Then he turned and left. I closed the door and rested my forehead on it. Mommy? Max said. What's happening? I shut my eyes. It's all right, sweetie. Mommy's just trying to fix a problem. That's all. We both got quiet. A few seconds passed. Will we be okay? I think so. Come on, let's go get ready for bed. Sleep in Mommy's room tonight. I'll come tuck you in. Okay, Max said. He ran up the stairs without a care in the world. I put Officer Dan's number on speed dial. Then I checked every door and every window to make sure the house was totally locked down. Half an hour later, I tucked Max into my bed, kissed him goodnight, and closed the door behind me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Officer Dan. He told me the neighborhood was clear, but they'd keep a close watch. My heart sank. I had hoped they would have caught the bastard and we could put this whole mess behind us. All the same, I thanked the officer and told him good night. Sleep was out of the question. Instead, I'd fix a cup of coffee and sit up all night. And if I heard so much as a twig snap outside, I was calling the cops. I headed downstairs to start on the coffee. My chest tightened with anxiety. He was still out there. I just knew it. Probably even close by. What if he was standing outside the house at that very moment? I caught myself biting on a fingernail and stopped. That was a bad habit I'd developed when I was a kid, but nowadays, it only flared up during moments of high stress. I passed through the kitchen and opened the cabinet, fishing out both my Maxwell House coffee grounds and a filter. I loaded the filter, dumped in a few scoops, and hit brew. Then I stood there a moment, feeling myself wanting to cry again. Damn it, Jenny, now is not the time to get emotional. You're the adult here, hold it together. Something on the island countertop beside me shined in my periphery. I glanced over, then I stared for a long time, in disbelief, trying to make absolutely certain that my eyes weren't deceiving me. Sitting right there on the countertop was a fresh set of Polaroid pictures. That was impossible. I'd given the officer everything I had. Was I losing my mind? I reached out, almost scared to touch them, and gently picked them up. In the first picture, Max was hiding behind my legs while I spoke with Officer Dan. Only this shot wasn't taken through an open window from outside the house. It was taken from behind us, from inside the house. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. There was no way an intruder could have entered the house and taken a picture with an officer standing right there. I flipped to the next one. This one was of me in my bedroom, tucking my son into bed, and the way it was shot looked like something only possible in a dream. It was captured from a bird's eye view, directly above our heads. A blade from the ceiling fan even cut into the edge of the frame. Because it was taken so close to the light, the shot was overexposed, which put a hazy kind of filter over it. This defied all logic. To get that picture, whoever or whatever took it would have to have been suspended from the ceiling. They would have to have manipulated themselves into an impossible angle, all without me or Max knowing. My hands were trembling now. The room was beginning to spin. Terrified now, I flipped to the final picture. It was of me, my back facing the camera, standing in my kitchen. I was looking down, studying something in my hands, just like I was now, at this very moment. The shot was taken so close behind me, whatever had taken it could have reached out and touched me. I needed to get Max out of the house, right now. Something snapped, directly behind my head. Then the room was quiet again. My mind took a moment to register what it even was, but slowly a sick realization slithered up from the pit of my stomach. What I had just heard was the shutter of a Polaroid camera. The camera's inner mechanisms hummed as it worked to print out the picture. I froze. I stopped breathing. In a desperate attempt, I tried reasoning with the intruder. "What do you want from me?" I cried. I listened for a response, still holding the pictures in my trembling fingers. There was no reply. The picture finished printing, and whatever was behind me stood perfectly still. Several seconds ticked by. Was it waiting for me to turn around? Across the counter, against the back wall, was a block of kitchen knives. I wished they were closer, but they were way out of reach. Depending on what happened next, maybe I could get to them. But for now, I would have to turn and face whatever was behind me, head on. One slow inch at a time, I turned my head, my heart pounding inside my chest. I expected to be stabbed or choked or grabbed at any second. I turned a little bit further, then shot a glance back. The kitchen was empty. I exhaled, but a new fear, much greater than before, exploded inside me. It's going to get Max. I dropped the pictures and shot around the counter and ripped out the biggest knife from the block. Then I dug out my phone and hit call on Officer Dan's contact. Call failed. I tapped the screen several more times. Call failed, call failed, call failed. I slammed it on the counter in a fit of anger. Of all the times for my phone to not work, Of course it would be now. I had no other option. I'd have to run upstairs and get Max by myself. I moved through the downstairs with the knife aimed in front of me. I checked around every corner and every piece of furniture I passed. I sprinted up the stairs, then through the upstairs hallway, toward my bedroom. I pushed the bedroom door open slowly, horrified that it had already beaten me there. Thankfully, Max was still under the covers, safe and sound. I peeled the blanket off him and scooped him up in my arms. "Mommy," he said, rubbing his eyes. "Shh, we have to go. Stay quiet." He wrapped his arms around me and put his head on my shoulder. I crept over to the door and peeked into the hallway. Empty. I carried Max down the hall, toward the stairs. If we could just make it out the front door, I'd run straight to the neighbors and call the cops from there. Just a short trip down the stairs and through the living room. We could do it. When we neared the steps, I heard the worst noise imaginable. Footsteps pounding up the stairs. My mind entered into fight or flight mode. Should I attack? Give Max a chance to run? No, I can't leave him. He'd never get away. I backed up. To my right was my son's bedroom. I ducked inside and rushed to the closet. I inched open the door as quietly as I could, but still, it squealed on its hinges. We slid inside. There was barely enough space for both of us. I clicked the door shut and stood in front of Max, using my body as a shield. "Mommy, what are we doing?" I turned and cupped a hand over his mouth. Not another word. We listened. With each passing second, the footsteps grew closer until they arrived at the bedroom door. Then they slowed to a nice and easy stroll and entered the room. Floorboards creaked under a shifting weight. Something paced across the room, from left to right, like it was searching for us. Once it reached the right wall, it stopped, then turned, and moved toward the closet. I tightened my grip on the knife. A stream of adrenaline coursed through my veins, making my skin tingle. I fought hard to keep my mind clear and focused. If the door opened, I would take them by surprise, hammer the blade down in one quick motion. It was all I had. It came right up to the door and stopped. The sound of our own breathing filled the closet. A floorboard creaked. Every nerve inside my body screamed. What is it doing? Why is it just standing there? Then a camera clicked. Through the gap under the door, a light flashed. Against all logic, all reason, it had taken a picture of the closet door. A deep yet childlike laughter vibrated into the closet. The camera clicked again. It knew exactly where we were, and it was playing games. It was toying with us. Max's body trembled behind me, and a soft whimper escaped from his lips. I prepared myself. The door would open any moment, and it was up to me to save our lives. I raised the knife so I could swing it down right as the door opened. I held my breath. I listened as the handle jiggled and began to turn. The door swung open. I hacked the knife blindly in front of me. Officer Dan staggered backwards just in time. "Whoa, whoa!" I darted my eyes around the room, looking for it, looking for blood. I was frantic. It's just me. No one is here. I've got you. You're safe." "No, we're not. It was just here." I heard. "We have multiple officers searching your home. No one is here." I scanned the room again. There was no camera, no creature, no obvious threat. The stress of what had just occurred began weighing down on me. I lost my sense of balance and stumbled. Officer Dan caught me by the arm. He guided me toward Max's bed. As I sat down, Max darted out from the closet and jumped onto the bed and clung onto me. "You called me, remember?" Officer Dan said. "But you didn't say anything, so we were afraid something had happened. We forced open the front door, then I heard you guys in here. Did you think he broke in?" "I know he did. There were footsteps, and there's more pictures. Just look on the counter. There are no signs of forced entry, Jenny." Officer Dan paused and glanced over at the closet door. He ran his palms together, then approached the bed. He took a seat beside us. You know, sometimes, in high-stress situations, our minds produce things, sounds, images, things like that aren't really there. It's perfectly normal. Given your situation, it's possible that that's all that happened. Don't talk to me like that, Dan. Don't talk to me like I'm crazy. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. You're a cop, not a therapist. Get off the bed. Once I'd snapped on him, Officer Dan had no more psychotherapeutic explanations for me. He stood and left us alone in the room. He left the house, in fact, but some of the other officers were kind enough to stay with us until morning. For the rest of the night, there were no more signs of the intruder. The next day, I applied for a credit card and checked us into a hotel. I also put that house on the market. A week later, someone bought it. I took the money and bought a new house in a completely different state. Even though the old one sold well under its value, I didn't care. As long as we left behind whatever was in there, we had all we needed. At Max's new school, I met a group of moms that I became friends with, and that made a huge improvement on my quality of life. For the first time in a long time, I had people who cared about me. These ladies checked up on me, came over for wine night, got me out of my house. They even introduced me to a great guy who I'm still dating. Max made some new friends of his own, and he seemed happy at his new school. For a while, things were pretty great. This morning, I put a note in Max's lunchbox, telling him how much I loved him. I know that is incredibly lame, but I couldn't help myself. He's the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I always want him to know that. When he got home from school, he threw his lunchbox on the counter, ran up to me, and kissed me on the cheek. "I love you too, Mommy," he said. Then he went into his room to do his homework. My heart filled with joy. I was floating as I started to clean out his lunchbox. Then, for the first time in a long time, I actually cried. I cried because, at that moment, I loved my life. I wish things would stay like that forever. I took the ice pack out of the lunchbox, then turned it upside down over the trash can. A few plastic baggies dropped into the trash, and then a piece of paper fluttered out. Paper made of a different material than the one I'd written the note on. This one was glossy, small, and square. It was a Polaroid. Violent images flooded my mind. The flash under the door, the camera click, demonic laughter. I leaned against the wall. I was having trouble breathing. "Calm down," I told myself. "Calm down. Breathe. That's it." Maybe it was just something Max was working on in class. I fished the picture out of the trash. It was taken inside a classroom. Kids sat at their desks, talking amongst themselves. It was all normal enough, but then I noticed the angle at which the photo was taken. It was taken from the back of the classroom, shooting down at the kids' heads, almost like it was taken from the ceiling. Centered in the picture, held in sharp focus, was Max's smiling face. He was captured mid-laugh. I screamed and dropped the picture. It spiraled to the ground and landed face down. There was a note scribbled on the back. Now I don't know what to do. I thought it was the house. I thought that if we moved, we would leave that thing behind. But now I know it was all in vain, because it followed us. On the back, written in dark red ink, were the words, "I love you too, Jenny."